The Body Keeps the Score. Bessel talks about the approach that's being taken in the DSM manuals, a veritable smorgasbord of diagnoses. In a statement released in June 2011, the British Psychological Society complained to the APA that the sources of psychological suffering in the DSM-5 were identified as located within individuals and overlooked the undeniable social causation of many such problems. This was in addition to a flood of protest from American professionals, including leaders of the American Psychological Association. And this is one of the it's one of the expressions of the emphasis on the individual, which is one of the expressions of chauvinism, the overemphasis of masculine energy, which is the point, and the de-emphasis of feminine energy, which is the field. You have the whole, and then you have the illusion of duality as experienced within the ego consciousness of space-time continuums, which is much like you have the entire movie laid out for you on a DVD, and then you go into ego consciousness as a little laser beam, and you watch one scene after another, and you have the sense that this bit causes this bit, and this bit was connected to this bit, and this bit hasn't happened yet, and this bit already happened, and this bit is happening right now, which is created by the zoom-in of the individual ego. And so not only is the focus on the individual in doing a diagnosis, whereas in fact the diagnoses could just as objectively be made of the environment. In other words, if we have a diagnosis of this hand, we can conclude, as a direct result from observing this hand, we can conclude that there is such a thing as a ring, which means there must be ring makers, and there must have been some force that put the ring on. And we can conclude, if we understand that this is a mineral, we can conclude that there must be miners, people that collect minerals, and we can conclude that there are people who cut minerals and polish minerals. And then we could extrapolate a probability that there are also people who sell rings and move rings from point to point. But we can certainly diagnose a lot about the environment from just looking at one ring on a finger, even though the environment is invisible to the frame within this screen. And we can deduce from the fact that there is a biological unit here, we can deduce that there were parents, and that if there were parents of parents. And if we understand some of the kind of awarenesses and experiences of the individual, we can come up with a diagnosis of the type of planetary system that would lead to an individual existing. We can diagnose the environment from the individual, the field from the particle. We can also diagnose the particle from the field. We can say that in a chauvinistic culture, boys will tend to be less emotional than girls, because emotion is more feminine. And so we can diagnose the individual by analyzing the culture. We can assume that in a culture in which it is shameful for men to show affection to one another, and in which it is considered cute and attractive for women to show affection to one another, we can diagnose the escalated amount of suicide in men. In other words, by examining the cult of culture, we can extrapolate the probability fields on a point-by-point level, and by looking at the point-by-point data, we can extrapolate the field of the cult, because they are interlinked, because there is a relationship between a culture and the bacteria that grows and dies within a given culture. And there is a relationship between what grows and dies and the culture that is implied by the existence of a given phenomena. The existence of this hand suggests, if you're experiencing it visually, that there are eyes, because this hand does not exist to you through the lens of this camera unless you have eyes. The very fact that you can conceive of a hand while watching this video means you have eyes. So there's a tremendous amount of possibility, and the key is you get the greatest depth perception. Why do we have two eyes? Well, you get the greatest depth perception by cross-referencing the slightly different images when the eyes are just a few inches apart. But you get vastly more complex depth perception when you can explore information from multiple sides of the equation. From the individual diagnosing the environment, from the environment diagnosing the individual. You look at all of that data simultaneously, you have a more complete picture with more dimension. You take the picture of the future, the present, and the past, and you have a more complete picture of momentum than if you take a snapshot in any given point on that continuum.